Some adventure bikes are too big for the trail. Some adventure bikes are a little too small for big roads. This Honda Transalp is just right. And in today's video, we're going to walk through the features on this motorcycle, talk to its owner, get it out on the road, and see what it's about.
All right, hitting the road in the Transalp. I'm starting out in the standard mode. I'll try sport in a second. There are quite a few different riding modes that you can try out in this bike, which makes sense because this is a motorcycle that is designed to work in a lot of different riding scenarios. So if I scroll through them real quick, let's see, we've got sport, we've got rain, gravel, and there's two user modes. If you want to cycle back to one of the modes that you just passed, you got to go through the whole list. And I can tell you right from the get-go, this is a motorcycle that feels pretty light once you get it moving, even though it's 463 pounds, so it's definitely not a tiny motorcycle, but it doesn't feel bad on the road, and the riding position is obviously very comfortable. It's very upright, and this is a motorcycle that would be no problem at all for longer distance rides. This bike does have a few minor modifications like hand guards and like a top case mount behind the seat that the owner Chris has put on this bike, which makes sense because this motorcycle's always been a little bit about personalization. The Transalp name has been around for a long time, since the mid-1980s, so these are motorcycles that carry with them a lot of heritage, and that heritage is this being a bike that you can use in all different kinds of scenarios. So of course, naturally, people would kit out these motorcycles to do whatever kind of riding specifically it is that they want to be doing. And yeah, the way that this bike comes from the factory, it's definitely not set up for aggressive off-road riding, as you can tell from the tires. It's definitely a motorcycle that's happy to pitch into a corner on its factory tires. So it feels like a bike that would be fun on a twisty road. I don't doubt that for a second. But if you want a motorcycle that's going to be a little bit better when you hit dirt, you're going to have to go and change up the tires at least a little bit. This as a touring bike, though, would do pretty well. And I'm sure you could go out there and get yourself a slightly bigger windshield if you want some more wind protection, because I still hear the wind hitting my helmet. This is not a massive windshield, but it still creates a little bit of a pocket that you can especially squat down into if you really need.
Powering the Transalp is a 755cc parallel twin, and this is a 270-degree parallel twin, which means that it's going to have a little bit more character and it's going to be a better sounding engine. But this also comes with a quick shifter from the factory for its 6-speed transmission, which is pretty nice. And the US spec on this bike delivers around 83 horsepower and 55 pound-feet of torque. For suspension, the Transalp uses 43mm inverted Showa forks, and this bike has 7.9 inches of travel in the front, 7.5 inches of travel in the rear. For wheels and for brakes on the Transalp, this bike comes from the factory with a 21-inch front wheel and two 310mm brake discs, and in the rear an 18-inch wheel. So there will be quite a few different tire options for this motorcycle, but talking to the owner Chris, he said that these wheels are not set up from the factory to run a tubeless tire, so that's worth some consideration. Now the standard seat on the Transalp is 33.7 inches, but you can get a few different seats. You can get a comfort seat that's actually a little bit thicker, or you could get a seat that's around 32.6 inches, so about an inch lower if you're having a hard time reaching the ground on this bike. And the fuel tank is pretty nice, 4.4 gallons.
Now something that Honda has changed up versus some of the older Transalps is they've played with the suspension a little bit. And this is the first Transalp I've actually ever gotten to ride, but apparently this update to the suspension makes a pretty big difference to how the bike rides. And so far, in my brief ride, it feels pretty good. I'm about 175 pounds, and this motorcycle feels plenty comfortable, doesn't feel overly soft. And yeah, once again, it does have a lot of suspension travel. Now I'm going to go ahead, switch it into sport mode, and we'll give it a little bit of throttle here. I like this engine. Yeah, this is nice. This is a great sounding engine. I like the way that the power is delivered on this motorcycle. makes it a fun motorcycle to ride. I really like a good parallel twin. A 270-degree parallel twin like this versus Honda's 500 parallel twins, that's a 180-degree parallel twin, not nearly as fun. So this is a way more interesting motor to be on, and that's just going to make it a bike that you want to ride more often. The other good thing about this motorcycle is it comes in right at $10,000 before destination, which is another $600, and that's really not a bad price. This motorcycle has everything you need and nothing you really don't, because there are plenty of bigger ADVs out there on the market that have all the tech and every feature and the kitchen sink thrown at it, and that stuff is cool, especially if you're riding really long distances. But this is a little bit more stripped down to just the essentials, which makes it more affordable, and it also makes it not quite as heavy of a motorcycle, all of which are welcome things depending on what kind of riding and what kind of bike you're looking for.
Now I've got this motorcycle's owner Chris here to talk a little bit about what drew him to the Transalp initially and your experience with it so far. Now, to be fair, you did get this bike pretty recently, right?
Yeah, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so you've had it for a couple weeks, which is longer than I've been around it, so you can still talk a little bit more about your experience with the motorcycle so far, but maybe we'll check back in 6 months or a year and get a little more insight. But tell me first, what drew you to this motorcycle initially?
So, I mean, I had a KTM 790 Adventure R for a number of years, and that's an awesome bike in many ways. I think it's like the best of the adventure bikes in terms of just off-road ability.
Right.
But I was finding I wasn't really enjoying riding it on the street. Not because it's not a fun street bike, but it's kind of hard work. It's like, puts out a bunch of heat. And I think people probably know they don't have the best reputation for reliability.
Right.
You know, camshaft issues and just other like reliability stuff. So I was like, okay, I want something that I can just hop on and ride that's fun, comfortable, easy to ride. And I don't ride my adventure bikes in like super gnarly off-road anyway. I have other bikes for that.
Yeah, because you've got a couple dirt bikes, and I would imagine a lot of people that are shopping for a motorcycle in this category also have dirt bikes. So it seems like what you wanted with this particular motorcycle was something you could take on the occasional fire road, dirt road,
Yes.
and explore here in Colorado with, because we have all kinds of different riding conditions. Even some of our paved roads feel a little bit like dirt roads at times.
Yes.
A lot of gravel and all kinds of things over the road surface. But you wanted this to be a motorcycle that would be really good, especially for riding on the street.
Yes, exactly. Like something that was, I wanted to jump on and ride and have a good time riding on the street. And then, yeah, like you said, the occasional dirt road like you see here, you know, some of the dirt roads up in the mountains are a little bit more adventurous. But I also didn't want one of the really big, heavy adventure bikes. Like this one to me has more than enough power. And it's still light enough to where if I do get myself on a trail that's a little bit more technical, I'm not trying to like, you know, handle 550 pounds. It's still, at least it's in that kind of lighter weight range.
And that's why I think that this motorcycle is right in that Goldilocks zone, because there are some adventure bikes that are arguably a little too small and underpowered and lightweight for some of the bigger highways that we have out here, especially wide open country like this, where you might be doing some pretty long distances at high speeds.
Yes.
But on the flip side, then there are those 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 cc adventure bikes that are great on the highway for long distances. But like you said, if you get it over loose surfaces, it starts to feel a little iffy.
Yes.
And if you do put yourself in a position wherever you have to pick the motorcycle up, it's just that much more metal you gotta lift off of the ground.
Exactly, especially if you're on your own. I mean, if you're riding in a big group, maybe it's not so bad because, you know, a few of you can get together and pick it up. But if you're on your own, and especially if it falls, people maybe don't always think about, but they don't usually fall on flat ground.
Yeah.
They usually find a way to fall, whether like down a hill.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you can pick it up on flat ground, but can you pick it up when it's like in a ditch facing downhill?
Yeah.
Even this would be a stretch, but at least it's, you know.
Because it's about 463 pounds is what they say on the website.
Yes.
So it's not a tiny motorcycle, but it is in between. Plenty enough motorcycle to take on whatever highway and whatever road you want to be on for basically any amount of time.
Yeah.
I would imagine. Have you done some longer rides?
I haven't yet. I mean, I have been on the freeway with it, and it was great on the freeway.
Yeah.
You know, it was as good a bike as I've ridden on a freeway. Like you can cruise along at whatever speed you would like within, you know, the speed limit, and it's super comfortable. So yeah, I could, if I had to like do, ride across the country, I wouldn't hesitate to jump on this bike and do it. I wouldn't feel like I needed something, bigger or more powerful.
And then the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because it always takes me a little while to get used to the tech on different motorcycles, because it's very different between different brands and even different models within the same brand. So as far as the tech goes on this bike in particular, how have you found it, the different riding modes, the screen, all of the features that you've used so far?
I think it's like a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I think it's got a lot of cool features. I think the display is great. No issues with that. It's easy to switch between modes. It's got a mode button, which is nice.
Yeah,
Not all bikes have that.
Right here on this side of the handlebar.
Yes, and you can switch modes while you're riding along. It doesn't give you any drama with that. The only thing is really for off-road, and a lot of people on the internet have talked about this. So I'm just repeating it here. But like, if you set it. For example, if you turn the traction control off, next time you key the bike on, it's back on again, actually at the maximum level.
So you have to go in every time and remember to adjust it, which is not unique to this motorcycle. There's plenty of brands that do that.
Right, but not all. And the same, the ABS is kind of a lot of drama to turn off, and then again it comes back on. The ABS I haven't had such an issue with. The off-road ABS mode has seemed okay to me. The traction control off-road is more of a problem. You really kind of have to, if you're in anything like at all tricky, you kind of have to turn it off, or it's too intrusive.
So it's a bit more intrusive.
Yes. And the fact that it's intrusive and difficult to turn off is a bit annoying.
Yeah.
Whereas like the KTM I had, the rider raids were amazing off-road. Like that, it made you feel like a good rider when you could turn on the off-road mode and go up a hill climb and just open the throttle, and the bike just was there to help you figure it out. So you didn't even have to turn it off because it was so well set up.
So it seems like overall some of that maybe makes this feel a little bit more street oriented than some other adventure bikes, even though fundamentally there's a lot of what you need to go off-road here. 7.9 inches of suspension travel in the front and 7.5 in the rear. So it's got the suspension travel, that's for sure. Spec'd from the factory, and like you said, since you just got this bike, it's got a pretty street oriented tire. You've got slightly knobbier than full street tread on it. It's somewhere in the middle, but as far as that spectrum goes, it definitely leans more road oriented. So that's how the bike comes from the factory, and you could kit it out however you want to.
And I'm going to switch the tires. I mean, I don't know if I've ever bought a motorcycle where I didn't have to switch the tires. I feel like they never come with the tires you really want anyway. So it's like, the only thing the one big miss with this bike to me is the lack of tubeless. Like, it's got tubed wheels, which for the use case, considering it is more road oriented, that seems like a miss to me. And that's kind of a pain to upgrade.
Right.
Like, that's not an easy. There's other things where you're like, oh, it doesn't have cruise control. Well, I can actually go buy that and fit it. It's not that bad if I want that.
But otherwise, for a bike that you're primarily going to use on the street, you would say you found this to be an overall good package?
Yeah, I love it. So far, it's only been a few weeks, but yeah, I really look forward to jumping on this and riding it. The engine, I think the engine's really the best bit about this bike. I think it comes from the Hornet. I think it's the same engine, but it's such a beautiful engine. It sounds great.
Well, any 270-degree parallel twin makes such a nice noise. It's got a lot of character.
Yes.
So I love that about this engine on this bike. And then the other question that I have a lot of times for people that are getting into any adventure bike, because these are generally tall bikes, and like we said, they're not always the lightest weight things. How do you feel about the size of this bike and just rideability in that sense, reaching the ground? And
yeah, the seat height is fine. For me, at least, I'm 5'10", pretty proportionate, and for me, it's no problem. It's a bit lower than a dirt bike. So if you have any kind of familiarity with a taller, like riding dirt bikes, this is totally fine. Weight-wise, one of the things that attracted me to this over, say, like the Tenere is it carries its weight a little bit lower. I haven't. The Tenere gets a lot of kind of feedback that the weight is high, because that's one of the competitors to this. And and people that feel a bit tippy, this does not have that.
Nice.
This is as much weight as I want to be dealing with, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. Awesome. Well, Chris, I appreciate you letting us film your motorcycle and letting me ride it. And it's always good to get to talk to an owner, someone who's actually living with one of these motorcycles, rather than us, where a lot of times we only get a couple days or a couple hours with each bike. So thanks again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Now, I'm lucky enough to have ridden the Touareg 660 that we owned, the Tenere 700. So a couple of motorcycles that do compete directly with this. And man, it would be hard to pick a winner. They're all really fun motorcycles that feel like they could do everything, and that feel like motorcycles I could spend a lot of time on. This is a bike I would be happy to cross the country on, happy to do some fire roads on, happy to do a twisty canyon road on and lean into the handling even on the street a little bit more. So it's a do everything kind of bike, and if that's what you're looking for, it's worth riding all three and seeing which features, which engine, which styling, which tech package makes the most sense for you. But I really can't point out a whole lot about this motorcycle, at least in a brief ride, that I dislike. Now that's all for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, we are partnered up with Rider Justice because they are the people to work with if you ever need legal representation, either on 2 wheels or 4. They do an awesome job looking out for motorcyclists all over the country, so you don't have to be Colorado based to work with the folks over at Rider Justice. So be sure to check them out using the link below. That's all for this video, and we'll see you next time.